Well, things are starting to heat up for the Eagles as Philly has gotten some wild trade rumors in recent days, and an ESPN insider actually just linked them to multiple big names, including a couple dream trade targets on the edge, along with a more realistic target, and a couple cornerbacks that could make a ton of sense. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts is quietly playing at an MVP level, Saquon Barkley comments on the running game, and the Eagles got some unexpected news today regarding a star player that could be a little bit concerning. So let's talk about that and all the other latest Eagles news starting right now. Alright, so the Eagles trade rumors have only been heating up in recent days, as despite the fact that the Birds just brought back Brandon Graham to bolster the depth out on the edge and add a little juice back to the pass rush, plus Nolan Smith is set to return after the bye week, but there's still been a lot of speculation and noise that Howie Roseman might still attempt to add an edge rusher at the trade deadline, or also maybe a cornerback. Now, of course, there's been a lot of rumors as to who the Eagles could target, some being just speculation, while others are tied to actual reports. And now we actually do have a few new reports to go over. But first off, I just want to say, make sure you guys drop a like down on this video. It really does help me out so much. Let's see if we can get to at least 500 likes. Again, that would be greatly appreciated. And now let's start off with this report from Jordan Schultz, saying that with the Dolphins sitting at just 1-6, teams around the NFL are keeping an eye on their pass rushers ahead of the trade deadline, those being Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, both of which I've mentioned in a previous video, and also Matthew Judon, who is a surprise healthy and active on Sunday. And while this isn't a report saying that the Dolphins are necessarily actively shopping these guys, again, they all do make perfect sense as potential trade targets for the Birds at the trade deadline, with the Dolphins struggling as much as they are. And, each one would be an interesting addition to the Eagles' pass rush. Chubb has been the most productive this season, but probably would be the hardest to acquire. Phillips has some exciting upside and has shown flashes, and he'd be a little cheaper. And then Judon would definitely be the weakest addition, but also the cheapest. And he isn't playing as well this year, but he still could add some depth and maybe contribute, plus he'd be another veteran leader in that room. But those aren't the only names that the Eagles could possibly be interested in. I mean, obviously the big name that everyone wants to talk about is Trey Hendrickson, as teams have reportedly been making calls for him in the lead up to the trade deadline. Now, the Bengals reportedly are not shopping him, and he isn't necessarily expected to be traded, but there's still a chance that it could happen, and the Eagles have been a team that has rumored interest in trading for him. And in fact, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler recently released a list of the top 25 trade deadline targets around the league, and Hendrickson was ranked number 1 on the list, and Fowler predicted that he has a 20% chance to be traded at the deadline, while he also listed the Eagles as a potential fit. Now, I'm not sure how much of that is just pure speculation on Fowler's part, and how much is rooted in actual inside knowledge, but this definitely only adds more fuel to the Trey Hendrickson to the Eagles' fire. And actually, moving down the list, Fowler has the Eagles listed as a fit for a lot of these guys. For example, there's Jets edge rusher Jermaine Johnson, who I've also previously talked about, as he ranks number 10 on the list and was actually given a 35% chance to be traded at the deadline, as Fowler cited that while they're not looking to move him, they would be more open to moving him than Will McDonald if they were going to make a move at the edge rusher position. And once again, the Eagles were listed as a potential fit for him. Now, again, not saying this is super likely to happen, but we'll keep an eye on it. And then sticking with edge rushers, we also have the Titans' Arden Key, who's listed at number 13 on the list, and Fowler is giving him a 40% chance to be traded due to the fact that he's in the last year of his contract, and the Titans are apparently open to trading players that are in the last year of their contracts and that also aren't in the franchise's long-term plans. And once again, the Eagles are listed as a potential landing spot for him, and I'd say out of all the moves on this list, at least at edge rusher, I think this is probably the most likely move for the Eagles to make. So again, we'll keep an eye on all that, but, edge rusher isn't the only position where the Eagles could make a move, as obviously cornerback is the big glaring position in need on the Birds' defense, and Philly was linked to a few guys at that position too, with the most notable one being the Seahawks' Riq Woolen, as Fowler ranked him number 4 on his list and gave the Seahawks a whopping 50% chance to trade him at the deadline, which is the second highest mark of any player on the entire list, as he cites that multiple league executives have Woolen marked as a strong trade candidate, with one even saying, quote, "They've been wanting to move him for a while." So if that's true, and if you're Howie Roseman, you gotta be all over this move. I mean, sure, Woolen has been inconsistent at times during his career so far, and he's had bad moments, but he's also a freak in nature, standing at 6'4", while having elite speed, and he also has 11 picks and 30 pass breakups throughout his career. So, he'd be a definite upgrade at cornerback number 2. And I also think being coached by Christian Parker could maybe help him reach his potential. So, again, I think the Eagles should be all over this move if it's a possibility and it doesn't cost you too much. And then you also have Bengals cornerback Taylor Britt, who is listed at number 20 on the list, as he was linked to the Eagles by Fowler while being given a 25% chance to be traded at the deadline. And this comes after he had fallen out of favor in Cincy and was actually a healthy scratch this past week. However, he's only 26 years old, and he had 7 interceptions and 15 pass breakups the past 2 seasons, and he would be a good fit into Vic Fangio's zone scheme. Now, he's a much less exciting option, there are definitely concerns there, but still, it's an option that would make sense for the Eagles. And then also, I do have to mention that Fowler also listed the Eagles as a landing spot for Ravens tight end Mark Andrews, who was number 6 on the list and was given a 20% chance to be traded at the deadline. And while yes, the Eagles do have a need at the tight end position, especially for the long term, I just think this move is unlikely, but, we'll see. And speaking of moves that are unlikely, I also have to mention the rumor that was floating around on Tuesday regarding Raiders superstar Maxx Crosby, as he's a name that Eagles fans have floated around in trade rumors for a while now, and a report from Trey Hendrickson saying that the Dallas Cowboys actually called the Raiders about trading for Crosby has only made those rumors even louder. However, these reports were also followed up with reports from Tom Pelissero saying that the Raiders actually met with Crosby on Tuesday to let him know that they aren't shopping him and they aren't going to trade him, as even though other teams may have interest, both parties want to stay together. So, based on that, it definitely doesn't seem like Maxx Crosby is going anywhere anytime soon. That said, the Raiders are not a good team, and it might be smart to sell high and get assets for Crosby while you can. So, could they be lying and working to trade Crosby behind the scenes? I don't know. That's all speculation. Right now, I would probably agree with Pelissero, or at least believe his report saying that they're not going to trade him. But again, we'll see on that, and we'll also continue to monitor what happens with the Eagles at the trade deadline, and if they do end up actually making one of these moves or a different move. Moving on though, I think we also got to take a second and appreciate what Jalen Hurts is doing, because with all the issues and the drama and the question marks surrounding this team all season, especially offensively in regards to the running game and play calling, Hurts still has this Eagles team sitting at 5-2, and he's quietly been playing at an MVP level. I know that kind of sounds crazy, but since week 3, Hurts is 3rd in touchdown to interception ratio, he's 4th in offensive touchdowns, he's 4th in passing touchdowns, 4th in yards per attempt, 5th in offensive yards, 5th in passing yards, and 5th in passer rating, and overall, he's 1st in touchdown to interception ratio, 2nd in ADOT, 5th in passer rating, 7th in total EPA, and 7th in completion percentage. And he also has the highest passer rating in Eagles history through 7 games. It's crazy because by the national narrative, you would think that Jalen Hurts is playing bad, but actually, he's been playing some awesome football right now despite some rough circumstances. And again, the numbers combined with the Eagles' team success, I think, show that Jalen Hurts deserves to be in the MVP conversation. So if you haven't already, drop a like down below for that. Circling back to some of the offensive struggles though, and specifically the run game, it really has been frustrating. The Birds just have not been able to get that going really at all this season. And again, it's just been so frustrating to watch. And, that's really of no fault of Saquon Barkley. It's not like he's the problem, and there's nothing that he specifically can really do right now to get the problems fixed. But I also guess that's kind of good news in the sense, as we know that Barkley is still the dominant player that rushed for 2,000 yards last year. And it's even better to hear that he's still very optimistic that they can get the run game going. And he says when they do, it's going to be scary.
Do you feel physically as good as you did last year? Obviously, the numbers have been down. The blocking, it hasn't been, quite as effective. Do you feel as physically good to go as you did all through last year?
Yeah, I really do. I feel like I'm in a great spot. I try to be optimistic. I think that's, the scary thing. We haven't really got the run game going at the level we would like, and we're 6-2. So we have so much more room to improve in so many areas, and especially in our run game. But the thing that I love the most is the 1-2 from the guys up front, the pride that they take into it. Sometimes it seems like they even have a little more pride in it than me. But when we're all aligned and when we all continue to have belief, just got to continue to trust it. We know they're doing a lot of crazy things and muddying up. We know that's a focal point for defenses, but at the end of the day, I'm under the impression of I know we can't bet, but I'll put my money on those guys up front every single week, and I'm going to continue to trust it. And I know we're going to figure it out, and when it do, things are going to get scary.
Good stuff.
Again, it's definitely nice to hear Saquon be positive about it, but honestly, at this point, I'm tired of just hearing about it, and I want to see them actually go out on the field and do it. And so far, they haven't been able to. Now, do I think it's impossible? No, I don't. But the guys do have to execute better, and the play calling just has to be less predictable and put these guys in better positions. So, I guess we'll see if they make any progress this week. Moving on to some important injury news from Wednesday, though, the first update that we got is that the Eagles did, in fact, activate the practice window for cornerback Jakorian Bennett. So, of course, he was back out on the practice field Wednesday, and it seems like he could be on track to return against the Giants. So, that's definitely very noteworthy, and it'll be interesting to see whether he'll actually have the opportunity to maybe start on Sunday, just depending on what happens with Adoree Jackson and how they feel about Kelee Ringo. Which, speaking of Adoree Jackson, he was not seen at Eagles practice on Wednesday, along with Cam Jurgens, Azeez Ojulari, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., which none of those, in my opinion, are a big surprise. And, we'll continue to monitor them throughout the week, but my initial gut feeling is that none of them are going to play. Meanwhile, Grant Calcaterra was back at practice after missing the last 2 games, which is definitely a good sign. Could definitely see him returning this week. And then Brandon Graham was also seen out in the practice field for the first time this season. I mean, it really just does feel surreal to see BG back out there, so that's definitely awesome. And it was also good to see Moro Ojomo was practicing after suffering an apparent shoulder injury in the Vikings game after reports that it was a possible concussion. However, we also got some pretty concerning news regarding one of the Birds' most important players, that being A.J. Brown, as he missed practice on Wednesday with a hamstring injury, which is definitely a surprise for us fans considering that it didn't appear that A.J. got hurt in the Vikings game, so the fact that he's missing practice to start the week, again, is definitely concerning, especially since it is a hamstring injury specifically, which as we know, is an injury that can linger on for a long time. And last year, if you'll remember, AJ actually missed 3 games in the beginning of the season dealing with a hamstring, and even in training camp this year, he also missed a lot of time, yet again, with another hamstring injury. So, I wonder if this is the same one and it's now flared up again, or if it's different. Either way, it's definitely not good news. And if AJ can't go against the Giants on Sunday, or if, in worst case, he's out for any longer amount of time, that obviously is a major blow to the Eagles' offense and passing game, which just finally broke out last week. So, definitely hoping it's not serious and that AJ missing practice is just a precaution, but we'll continue to monitor the injury as time goes on. And all that said, you guys know that I'm going to be continuing to cover the Eagles throughout this entire week in the lead up to the Giants game, just as well as throughout the rest of the entire season. So if you don't want to miss anything, make sure you subscribe and you turn on notifications. And also, again, leave a like down below. It really does help me out so much, guys. Let's see if we get to at least 500 likes on today's video. And also, hit the hype button because that helps me out a ton as well. And also, leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. And if you do want to watch another Eagles video going over some other stuff, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.